10 years ago, my husband ran off with my own sister. They didn't just take our savings, they took my trust, my peace, and left me with a sick little boy who could barely breathe through the nights. I remember standing in that empty kitchen, the note still trembling in my hands, the sound of Ethan's coughing echoing down the hall. My parents said I should move on. The neighbors whispered that I must have done something wrong. But I didn't break. I worked, I fought, and I kept my son alive even when the world turned its back on me. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd stay small, buried in debt and shame. But they were wrong. Because 10 years later, when they came back laughing, showing off their perfect little life, my son, the boy they called fragile, made them regret everything. My name is Emily Harper, and I used to believe that love could fix anything. I met Daniel when I was 23, charming, witty, the kind of man who made promises sound like poetry. We got married after a year, against my parents' advice. He's ambitious, I said. He'll make something of himself. And for a while, he did. We bought a small house on the edge of Boise, Idaho, painted the porch yellow, planted daisies out front. My younger sister Lily visited often. She was vibrant and spontaneous, the kind of person who could light up any room, and Daniel always seemed to smile wider when she was around. At first, I thought nothing of it. I trusted them both. While I spent my evenings tutoring to pay off hospital bills, Lily would stop by to help with Ethan, my son, my fragile little fighter. Ethan had been sick since birth. The doctors called it chronic pediatric asthma. To me, it was the sound of him wheezing at 2 amperes. Me holding a nebulizer mask to his tiny face, whispering, "Breathe, baby, please." Daniel hated hospitals. He said they smelled like failure. "You're always worrying," he'd snap. "Can't you just let things be for once?" So I worked harder. I smiled through exhaustion. I believed that if I just loved enough, things would get better. Then, one evening, after a particularly long shift, I came home to silence. No cartoons, no hum of the humidifier, just stillness. I called out, "Daniel? Lily?" Nothing. Ethan's toy truck was lying on the kitchen floor. The drawers were open, half empty. And then I saw the envelope on the table. My name on it, in Daniel's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I need to live. Lily understands me in ways you never could. Don't call. Don't make this harder." My knees gave out. I fell against the counter, the paper cutting into my palm as if to remind me this was real. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Inside, my heart went numb. I called my parents in tears, begging them to come. My mother's voice was flat. "Emily, maybe if you'd taken better care of him, this wouldn't have happened." That night, Ethan woke up coughing. He asked for his father between shallow breaths, and I couldn't find the strength to tell him the truth. I sat on the edge of his bed, holding his small hand, whispering through the dark, "He's not coming back, baby. But I am. I'll always be here." The house was quiet again. Too quiet. That's the night I stopped believing love could fix anything, and started learning how to survive without it. The next morning, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like an echo, a hollow space that still remembered laughter. Ethan's tiny shoes were still by the door, Daniel's toothbrush gone, Lily's perfume still lingering in the hallway, the scent of betrayal. I called Daniel's number again and again, straight to voicemail. Then I called Lily's. "The number you've dialed is no longer in service." They'd planned this. Every detail, every exit. My savings account? Empty. The joint balance we built for Ethan's medical bills drained to the last cent. When I went to my parents, I was shaking so hard I could barely drive. My mother opened the door with her arms crossed. "Emily," she said coldly, "you can't just come crying every time life disappoints you." "Mom, they took everything," I begged. "Daniel, Lily, they're gone." She exchanged a look with my father. "Maybe," she said slowly, "if you'd kept your husband happy, he wouldn't have left." Her words cut deeper than any knife. Even my own parents saw me as the problem. I realized then I was truly alone. That night, Ethan had another attack. I rushed him to St. Luke's Hospital, holding his limp body in my arms. His lips turned pale, his breathing shallow. I screamed for help until nurses came running. Hours later, when his breathing stabilized, I sat beside his bed, watching the oxygen mask fog with every breath. My reflection in the hospital window looked like a ghost, tired, hollow-eyed, almost unrecognizable. A nurse gently touched my shoulder. "You should rest," she said softly. I shook my head. "I can't." Because if I stopped even for a second, I was afraid everything would collapse. The next day, I went back to the house, gathered what little we had left. I found an old envelope Daniel once labeled vacation fund. Inside, only a single dollar bill remained folded neatly, like mockery. Bills kept arriving, and the whispers spread faster than the truth. At the grocery store, people turned away. At school, colleagues spoke in hushed tones. She couldn't keep her husband. Her sister took him, imagine that. Ethan was the only one who didn't look at me with pity. He'd sit on my lap, clutching his inhaler, and whisper, "It's okay, Mom. We don't need anyone else." Sometimes at night, when the world was asleep, I'd walk to the kitchen, look at the empty spot where Daniel's coffee mug used to be, and whisper back, "You're right, baby. We don't." That was the first time I realized heartbreak doesn't kill you instantly. It kills you slowly, quietly, like frost creeping up a window pane. And if you don't fight back, one morning you'll wake up completely frozen. I didn't remember the exact day grief turned into survival, only that one morning I woke up, looked at Ethan sleeping beside me, and realized no one was coming to save us. Not Daniel, not Lily, not even my parents. So I got up. I made coffee from the last scoop of cheap grounds, packed Ethan's medicine, and walked out into the gray Boise winter to look for work. The world didn't care about my heartbreak. The world only cared if you could pay your bills. The first job I found was at a 24-hour diner off the highway. Grease, noise, endless coffee refills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. I scrubbed tables, poured drinks, smiled at truckers who barely looked at me. At night, when my shift ended, I'd come home, grade a few papers for extra tutoring cash, and fall asleep next to Ethan's nebulizer, humming like a lullaby. Every time he coughed in the dark, I jolted awake, terrified his next breath wouldn't come. One night, when his medicine ran out, I sat outside behind the diner, trying not to cry in front of anyone. The cold bit into my fingers. That's when Mrs. Henderson, my landlord, a stout woman with gray hair and kind eyes, found me there. "You look like you've seen the end of the world," she said. "Maybe I have," I whispered. She handed me a folded 20. "Take it. For the boy. And don't you dare pay me back." Her kindness cracked something inside me, not the pain, but the numbness. I promised myself I'd repay her someday. On weekends, I started cleaning houses. The rich ones, people who never noticed the woman mopping their marble floors. But I noticed everything. Their family photos, their laughter, the warmth I used to have. Sometimes, I'd stare too long at those pictures and remind myself, don't envy them, just work. Months passed. My body ached constantly, my hands blistered, but the bills got paid. Ethan's medicine stayed stocked. He started smiling again. "Mom," he said once, looking up from his coloring book. "When I grow up, I'm gonna buy you a big house. One with warm lights." I laughed through tears. "I don't need a big house, sweetheart. I just need you to breathe easy." That night, as he fell asleep, I looked around our small rented room, the peeling wallpaper, the flickering bulb, and realized something powerful. The people who left me had taken everything I thought I needed, but what they couldn't take was the will to rebuild. Pain was my teacher. Work was my weapon. And Ethan, he was the reason I kept breathing when it felt impossible. Years blurred together like pages in a diary I didn't have time to write. Ethan grew taller, thinner, quieter, but his eyes held something unbreakable. Every morning before school, he'd line up his inhalers on the table, checking each one carefully like a little soldier preparing for battle. At 13, he was already wiser than most adults I knew. He'd say things that made me stop and stare. "Mom, do you think pain ever gets tired of hurting people?" I'd smile weakly. "Maybe someday it just gives up," he grinned. "Then we just have to outlast it." That boy carried a strength I couldn't always find in myself. My jobs changed. Diner shifts became daytime work at a small medical clinic downtown. I started as a receptionist, but the doctors noticed how carefully I handled patient files, how I spoke to anxious parents. They trained me to help with appointments, insurance forms, even basic medical inventory. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. For the first time in years, I could breathe without counting every penny. Every paycheck meant one more night without fear of eviction, one more refill for Ethan's medicine. He'd wait for me at the bus stop every evening, waving his arms wildly even when I was too tired to lift mine. We'd walk home through the snow, hand in hand, leaving two sets of footprints that felt like victory banners. One night, after dinner, he looked up from his homework. "Mom, do you still think about Dad?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "I think about the lessons he taught me," I said carefully. "Like what kind of man I don't want you to become." Ethan chuckled softly. "Then he's been useful, huh?" His humor disarmed me every time. Even in pain, he found light. At 14, he announced his dream. "I want to be a doctor. Not just any doctor, one who helps kids breathe better." I blinked back tears. "That's a big dream." "So was surviving," he said simply. And just like that, the world around me, all the exhaustion, the loneliness, the years of scraping by finally started to mean something. He studied relentlessly, earning scholarships, joining science fairs, reading medical textbooks like novels. Teachers called him brilliant. But what made me proud wasn't his grades, it was his heart. Every night before bed, he'd check on me the same way I used to check on him. "Did you eat, Mom? Did you rest?" Sometimes I'd fake a smile, just so he wouldn't worry. But deep down, I knew the truth. My fragile little boy had grown into the reason I could keep standing. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was healing, both of us were. And though I didn't know it yet, the strength he was building would one day shake the very people who left us to die. 10 years had passed since that letter on the kitchen table. The ink might have faded, but the scar it left never did. By then, Ethan was 18, strong, bright, accepted into the University of Washington's medical program. The day he got that letter, I cried for the first time in years, not out of pain, but pride. We moved into a modest apartment near the hospital where he would study. It wasn't much, thin walls, a leaky faucet, but to me, it felt like triumph. For once, life was quiet, ordinary, until the day they came back. It was a Sunday afternoon in late September. I'd just left the grocery store, pushing a cart full of discount vegetables, humming to myself. The sun was warm. The air smelled of cinnamon from the bakery nearby. For a moment, everything felt normal, safe. Then I heard it. That laugh. Lily's laugh. Light, shrill, and unforgettable. I froze, and when I turned, there they were. Lily, in a designer coat and oversized sunglasses, her blonde hair styled like she'd just stepped out of a commercial. And beside her, Daniel. Older, heavier, but still wearing that same smug smile I used to mistake for charm. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. They stopped, too, shock flickering across their faces before Lily broke into a sugary smile. "Emily? Oh my God, it is you! Wow, you look different," Daniel smirked, sliding his hand around Lily's waist. "Didn't think we'd run into you here. Still in Boise?" "Yes," I said evenly, gripping the cart handle so hard my knuckles turned white. "Some of us don't run." Lily's smile faltered, then returned, thinner this time. "You must be doing okay. We just came back from Seattle. Daniel's business is thriving. Consulting firm," Daniel added proudly. 6 figures now. Took years, but we made it work." I looked at them, the perfect couple, standing there with matching arrogance, and wondered if they ever lost a night of sleep thinking about what they'd done. Lily's eyes darted away, almost guiltily. "How's Ethan?" she asked too casually. "Still, sick?" Something inside me cracked, not in weakness, but resolve. I smiled. Slowly, calmly. "You'll see him soon." Her brows furrowed. "Oh? Is he around?" "No," I said softly, pushing the cart past them. "But you'll see him soon." Their laughter followed me down the parking lot, light, careless, hollow. For them, it was just a coincidence, a moment to gloat. For me, it was a spark. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Lily's voice, Daniel's smirk, their matching rings glinting under the sunlight. 10 years of silence and they came back laughing, like nothing ever happened. But they had no idea what kind of man Ethan had become. No idea that the sick little boy they'd abandoned had grown into someone they could never belittle again. I didn't have to plan revenge. Life already had. And it was about to collect its debt through my son. A week after that encounter, the hospital where Ethan worked part-time announced a charity gala, an event for donors, alumni, and medical students. Ethan was chosen to speak about pediatric respiratory care. I helped him pick his suit, dark gray, crisp white shirt, the same tie I'd bought secondhand for his scholarship interview. He looked so grown up, standing there in the mirror. "You nervous?" I asked. He smiled. "A little. But I've faced scarier things than a microphone." "Like what?" "Asthma. And heartbreak yours." His answer hit deeper than he realized. That night, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and soft jazz. I volunteered at the reception table, checking guest names, pretending I wasn't terrified. And then, like a cruel joke, they arrived. Daniel and Lily. She was draped in emerald silk, diamonds glinting at her neck. He wore a tailored suit, one hand gripping her waist possessively, just like the old days. My breath caught. Lily froze when she saw me behind the desk. Her painted smile faltered. "Emily?" she whispered. Daniel's lips curled. "Well, looks like everyone's moving up in life." I straightened my name tag. "Welcome to the gala. Enjoy the evening." Their eyes flickered, they hadn't expected composure. But what came next silenced even their arrogance. When Ethan stepped onto the stage, the entire room shifted. He looked confident, calm, his voice steady as he began his speech. "When I was little, I spent more nights in a hospital bed than in my own room," he said. "Asthma doesn't just steal your breath, it steals your peace, your childhood, your parents' sleep." He paused, scanning the crowd. Lily stiffened. Daniel looked down at his drink. "But I had someone who refused to give up on me," Ethan continued. "A woman who worked double shifts, sold her wedding ring, and carried me through nights when I couldn't breathe. She's sitting here tonight, my mother, Emily Harper." Applause thundered through the room. My throat tightened. Ethan's eyes met mine, proud, steady before he looked back toward the crowd. "I owe her everything. And to those who once told her she'd never make it, thank you. Because your doubt became the fire that built our strength." The applause swelled again. Lily's hand trembled. Daniel's face flushed red. After the speech, guests surrounded Ethan, praising his poise. When the crowd thinned, Lily and Daniel finally approached. "Ethan," Lily began softly, "you've grown so much. Do you remember us?" Daniel added, forcing a smile. Ethan looked at them, no anger, just calm distance. "I remember my mother crying because of you," he said quietly. "I remember empty cupboards and hospital nights. I remember being told the money for my medicine was gone because you took it." Daniel opened his mouth, but Ethan's voice cut through. "You taught me what weakness looks like. But he nodded toward me. "She taught me strength." Lily's mascara began to smear. Her smile collapsed. "We were young," she whispered. "We made mistakes." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You made choices, and you live with them. We already did." Silence settled. The photographers had stopped taking pictures. Guests had turned to watch, sensing the storm beneath the surface. Ethan extended his hand, calm and deliberate. "I wish you peace," he said. "But don't mistake forgiveness for welcome." They stood frozen, unsure whether to shake it or walk away. In the end, Daniel turned first, muttering, "Let's go." Lily followed, eyes glassy, lips trembling. When they disappeared into the crowd, Ethan exhaled slowly. He turned to me. "You okay, Mom?" I smiled through tears. "You didn't just speak tonight, Ethan. You breathed for both of us." He wrapped his arm around my shoulders as the band resumed playing. And for the first time in 10 years, the air around us felt light again, not with revenge, but release. The night after the gala, I couldn't sleep. Not because of regret, but because the house finally felt quiet in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. Ethan slept soundly in his room, the glow of his study lamp still warm on the walls. I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through the mist, and thought about how strange justice could be. It didn't always roar. Sometimes it arrived gently through truth spoken aloud. A few days later, I heard the whispers. Daniel's consulting company, the one he bragged about, had collapsed. Something about unpaid loans, falsified contracts, angry investors. His name started appearing in local papers not under success stories, but legal troubles. Lily's social media vanished overnight. One of her old friends, who used to rent an apartment near her, came into the clinic where I worked. She recognized me immediately and sighed. "You won't believe it, Emily," she said. "They're broke. Completely broke. House repossessed. Creditors everywhere." I didn't respond. I just nodded, feeling nothing. No triumph, no bitterness, just a strange, calm pity. That evening, I came home to find Ethan cooking dinner, something simple, pasta and garlic bread. He was humming, his shoulders relaxed, his smile easy. "You're in a good mood," I said, setting my purse down. He chuckled. "I got my first scholarship grant approved for next semester." "That's amazing," he grinned. "Also, I heard about them." I paused. "Who told you?" "Everyone. Mom, you don't have to pretend it's not poetic justice." Oh, he turned off the stove, leaned against the counter, and looked at me not like a boy anymore, but a man who understood loss and grace in equal measure. "Do you ever wish you could forgive them?" he asked quietly. I thought for a long moment before answering. I used to think forgiveness meant pretending it didn't hurt, but now, I think it's about letting go, so the hurt doesn't own you anymore. Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we're free, right?" "Yes," I said, smiling softly. "We're free." Weeks passed. The story of Daniel and Lily faded from gossip to memory. I sometimes caught glimpses of them around town, a flash of Lily's hair at the supermarket, Daniel's voice arguing with someone in the parking lot, but I never approached. There was nothing left to say. One afternoon as I walked home from work, I stopped by St. Luke's Hospital, the same place I'd once begged nurses to save Ethan's life. He was there now, shadowing doctors, helping other children breathe easier. Watching him move through those sterile halls with quiet confidence, I felt tears sting my eyes. He'd made it. We'd made it. All the pain, the sleepless nights, the years of scraping by it had all led here. And though Daniel and Lily had lost everything, I didn't feel revenge. I felt peace. Because sometimes, the greatest punishment isn't suffering, it's watching the people you once hurt find happiness without you. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't knock or announce itself. It simply drifts in one morning, soft as sunlight through old curtains, and you realize the war inside you has gone quiet. 10 years ago, I was the woman everyone pitied. Now, I was the woman no one could break. Our little apartment had become a sanctuary. The same thin walls that once echoed with loneliness now carried laughter, the sound of Ethan humming as he brewed coffee before heading to the hospital. He was 23 now, strong, confident, with the same calm grace he'd shown that night at the gala. Sometimes he'd come home late, exhausted but glowing, saying things like, "Mom, today I helped a kid breathe without a machine for the first time." Every time he said those words, it felt like another wound inside me healed. One evening, I found him sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the Idaho sky gold and rose. He smiled when he saw me. "Remember when you used to tell me we'd get through anything? I remember you not believing me," I teased. He laughed. "I was just a kid. What did I know?" We sat there quietly for a while. The wind was cool, the sky endless. "Mom," he said softly, "if you ever saw them again, what would you say?" I thought about it for a moment, about Lily's nervous smile, Daniel's arrogant smirk, the years of silence between us. "I'd say thank you," I said finally. Ethan frowned. "For what?" "For leaving," I replied. "Because if they hadn't, I might never have found who I really was." He smiled faintly. The kind that carries both sadness and pride. "You don't hate them?" "No," I said. "Hate keeps you tied to the past, and I've spent enough years chained to ghosts." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess we finally won." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the porch. I reached out, squeezing his hand. "We didn't win, Ethan. We healed. That's harder." He smiled again, that same smile that once carried oxygen tubes and fear. now full of light and purpose. Sometimes, people at the clinic ask me about my story. They see my son's name in medical journals, hear him speak at conferences, and they ask how he became so driven. I just smile and say, he was fighting for breath long before he ever held a stethoscope. And me? I finally learned that revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's quiet. A life lived well. A heart unburdened. Daniel and Lily? I heard they left town. Some say they separated, others that they live somewhere near Spokane, trying to start over. I don't wish them harm, but I don't wish them back either. Some stories don't need revenge. They just need closure. Tonight, as I sit by the window, the soft hum of the city outside, I open the old box where I once kept Daniel's letter, the one that started it all. I don't read it. I just light a match, hold it to the corner, and watch the paper curl into flame. The fire burns small, steady like the life we rebuilt from the ashes. When the smoke fades, I whisper to the empty room, "We survived. That's enough." And in the next room, Ethan laughs at something on the phone, bright, alive, untouchable. That sound, I realize, is my peace. Not revenge. Just peace.